Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of Thought Leaders. I'm your host, Chris Shank. Today we have Eyal, who is the COO of AIVF. Thank you so much for joining us.
Hi, Chris. Thank you for having me. It's a
Yeah, of
pleasure.
course. Of course. Tell us a little bit about what you're working on now, what you guys do, what kind of companies you guys working with.
So it's uh it's pretty interesting. AIVF is, as it sounds, an AI-based company dealing with the IVF space. Basically, we're making baby making better,
Hmm,
which sounds odd, but we believe that every human being has a right to have a biological child. Unfortunately, it's not the case everywhere right now due to rising infertility rates in the world. And we believe and we know that AI has the ability to at least make some of it much, much, much better.
hmm, interesting. And where are you guys in terms of the company? You guys, in terms of like traction to date, are you guys working with individuals, organizations? How does that work?
So our customers at the moment are fertility clinics
Okay,
that strive to improve their pregnancy rates.
okay,
And you know, we believe that I personally believe that technology has a potential to increase our productivity and efficiencies all across our um, areas in life, but specifically in fertility, we believe that we have the ability to bring the top level of fertility success rates into any clinic, and that
yeah,
becomes and that becomes you know available for the public, for the wider public. Um, we do that by technology. We do that by AI and standardization, and setting the bar at the place where we can actually measure, you
super
know.
interesting. Okay. Got it. Very interesting. Definitely want to dive into more of what you guys are doing there. Before we do that, what to, because you have, I mean, this hasn't just been your area of expertise for the past, few decades or what have you. You've worked at a lot of different types of companies, but primarily in the operations sector. So, we briefly touched upon it right before we dove into this, but, operations typically is known as like the behind the scenes operator. And why don't you first tell us how you got involved in operations and kind of like that becoming your niche and area of focus? Was it something you
Sure.
always knew? Was it something you studied? How did you go about getting into it? And then how did you figure out that this matched ultimately the skill set that you had best to deliver? And we'll go from there.
Sure. So in my background, I'm a data engineer. So
Yep.
I'm a data geek. I love data. Even today, I think it's the best way to understand any organization is dive right into the database and ask questions. Today, it's even easier than it was at the time. You literally can ask questions verbally and get uh, data answers. But when you go into that and dive into the numbers and try to find some patterns and understand how it correlates to the reality around you, you
Mm,
find something very interesting, that many times organizations and people overlook data. And I think when you struggle, I wouldn't say struggle, but when you insist on diving into the details and understanding data, you find out that your organization can run much smoother. Your profitability rates can go up, I don't know, 6-8% just by improving areas that you have data on. And for me, that's super attractive. And uh, yes, I know the perception of operations being behind the scenes and very gray and dealing with processes. I wouldn't say bureaucracy. I'm the first person who hates bureaucracy. That's why we call it processes. It's completely different. People hate bureaucracies but love processes. I don't
mhm.
know why. But um, this is the profession that is 50% engineering, like true engineering. You can engineer any process and in any area of the company, but it's also 50% art, because it encompasses people, and encompasses everything that is necessary to keep the business running smoothly and efficiently. So there are various examples I can talk about, but it touches every aspect of the company, from sales and marketing to HR to customer service um, to supply chain management, um, to development, to product, like any aspect you touch on. There are multiple examples we can dive into them on how to deal with that. But on the 50% art, there is also leadership skills. There is also empathy that I think is hugely underrated in the qualities that a leader has to have. Adaptability, teamwork. Without all these, business operations do become just administrators.
Mm,
But with them, they become, the invisible force, I call them. These are the people who drive the business, who give their passion and talent and pretty intensively drive any engine of the business towards the same goal. So it's a pretty powerful profession in my mind.
interesting. Um, was there a certain time or a part of your career where you figured that part out for yourself? Like, I think, you're going from engineer, somebody who has, because the skill sets you just mentioned, right, like are not necessarily, I would say, are typically like kind of on opposite ends of the spectrum when you think about an engineer, and then somebody who has empathy and compassion tends to be somebody in the HR or people role, right? But you're mentioning this as part of the ops perspective, and it makes a ton of sense because I would say, every leader that we've had on this podcast, essentially, when they get to a leadership role, whether it's from AI or data or engineering or or sales, marketing, and HR, like at the end of the day, those words of empathy, compassion, people always rise up to the top. And I think there's different types of individuals, some that have that innately, programmed into their DNA and knew that in a very early, stage of their life. And then those that had to upskill themselves and learn that skill set in order for them to advance their careers to a certain way to becoming a good leader. Um, so I'm curious as to like when you found that, and what was that journey kind of like for you in terms of becoming more narrow focused around it?
Well, I think the first experience I can remember, I'm a Navy veteran,
Yep.
and I was a Navy officer on a Corvette. And coming out of military school, coming out of the Naval Academy, um, you're very persistent on the protocol, like how to run the process. There is one way. This is how it should be. This is the standard. Everybody needs to reach at least that standard, period. Um, and I think the first time I got onto the ship and tried to enforce that, one of the soldiers came up to me and said, "Look, I don't have what it takes. I've lost my gear, whatever." And I was very, very rough. I said, "I don't care. Figure it out. We have to go out soon. That's it. Um, just keep the process going. We're not going to compromise on that." Fine. We go out to sea, come back a few weeks later, military police waiting for me on shore. Apparently, that soldier stole the gear he had to get from another ship that docked right there. And I had to send him away. And this was, I think, my first lesson. You know, everything is your business. As a leader, everything is your business. It's not just keeping the protocol, it's being interested in how things are done. What's the next goal? Who is in front of you? What is he going through right now? I think that was the first really hard lessons I've learned. But, you know, going forward, um, in every, I think one of the most critical measures that an ops person needs to have are adaptability and having the ability to um, understand the connection on an ongoing basis between the big picture and the details he sees in front of him or her. And whenever you come to a junction, and you quickly understand that what worked yesterday doesn't work today because the person changed, because the atmosphere is different, because hundreds of thousands of reasons why it doesn't work. Just need to accept that and adopt. And once you adopt, you need to understand what is the change that you're going to make, and then understand the consequences. And this needs to happen very fast. So I think these skills, some of them are, to your questions, are I would say can be taught. I'm for sure leadership can be taught. I'm 100% convinced of that on various aspects. But some, I think, are just qualities that you're born with. And I don't think you can understand that. So for instance, understanding the connection between details and big picture, I've tried teaching that for a decade. I had one success. So it's really, I don't know if it's a born quality, but it's very tough to teach.
Yeah, I agree. Um, on that note, I kind of want to, discuss a little bit more around this idea of maybe the specific use cases too of, coming in from an operational perspective. And to me, it's almost like the superhero power is you're streamlining for efficiency across different departments, right? And you're basically the superpower is if you're really good at your job, you're optimizing and you're helping to improve margins by, cutting or not maybe cutting, but necessarily, but like optimizing spend for output. And again, across various departments within the organization. How do you think about it? What are some of those cases that you've seen where some of those skill sets that you mentioned, like the empathy, like the people part, like the understanding of how to communicate in the relationships, really played a pivotal role in order for you to get to that outcome? Because I feel like a lot of times it's not just now like you mentioned with the or your very first experience of like just get it done. Like that's not the way you want that to happen. That needs to be the output. But the way that you get to that result is all about communication and leadership. And obviously you didn't necessarily have those skills then, but like you didn't get the outcome desired probably because of you needed to level up on the communication part and understand the empathy and how you actually communicate to somebody to get to the result that you want to. So I'm curious as to like if there's any particular stories or narratives that you have around that where that typically is the biggest hurdle I think for a lot of leaders is buy-in, and getting team wide buy-in is it's that to me is the art. That to me is like the way that you are able to read people, and communicate in a way that each person understands it because they're all going to be bought in differently.
I totally agree. By the way, from my experience, and forgive my language, but 90% of fuck ups happen because of lack of communication
Yep.
or insufficient communication or just bad communication or even too little communication. From my experience, there is not, I would say, too much of a communication. Sometimes I found myself, during the COVID, um, I found myself that it was a big uncertainty in the market and in the world. What will happen, next month, tomorrow? Um, some people lost their relatives, some people lost their jobs, people work from remote. It's a huge uncertainty. And I found that frequent communication, even if as an executive, I didn't have, something so meaningful and different to say from one week to another, but just keeping the rhythm of every week communicating what is the status of the company, what are the plans for next week, couple weeks, it gave people so much relief that something is being held and managed and is predictable, that completely changed the picture for many of our employees at the time. And prioritizing clear communication over other tasks of just to get things done, I think is a key. Just to understand that you need to prioritize that. And people who are talented can in getting things done, um, I think can be I would say some of them already are very good communicators. Some of them can be taught. And if you don't have that, ask for help. There are plenty of people who will be happy to help you. Um, so I think, you know, examples for that. I'll give you some examples, right, for communication. I was working at Wix.com at the time. Um, every I would say every planning cycle, the entire company had access to the planning presentations. Completely transparent. Like everybody could walk in, or when we got bigger, log in, and watch the teams present their roadmaps, being asked questions, present their progress in front of management, in front of board, completely transparent. This created a huge trust. It's just created trust that things are being held. So, in um, even today, when in Israel we experience a war right now, just being very clear to our employees that what is the meaning of us uh, being at work, and keeping the company thriving, what it means for the company, what it means for the economy, what it means for the country. Just reflecting that and emphasizing that helps align everybody to the same goal. And then after that comes the processes and the KPIs and what it means in reality for the next week plan and the work plan and so on. For sure, I'm not overlooking that. But that's, I think, these are few examples of great communication, and it comes together.
Mm,
Because in today's world, like, I don't think there is a single significant task in a company that one person can do alone, no matter how good they are. Like, I always give this, even Iron Man is just an Iron Man. He can do many things. And Captain America, the same. But as the Avengers, they are unbeatable, right? And that's always the case with extreme talented people. You just can't. You need to be excellent in today's world. You need to be excellent in marketing, sales, product, customer success, and the supporting functions. You cannot just overlook that. And you need to work together. And that's what good communication does.
yeah, absolutely. Um, I'm curious now, kind of like leading into your work now with AIVF. That's it's quite different of a mission than a Wix is, right? And so,
Correct.
how did you come about making this decision to bring your talent and skills to here specifically? What was it about it that drew you in, and how does that shape up differently in terms of, if at all, in terms of like how you look at a business operations, if it's in a different industry, if it doesn't carry, are there different areas of like focus or prioritization for you that you've noticed that's different?
Sure. So I would start by that I'm very fortunate to work for a company that really does good. There are not many companies that are very uh, on point of doing good to the world. And I consider this doing good. So I think I'm very fortunate of being able to explain my kids what is it that I do at work, and have them being proud. And I also believe that in the health sector, technology is lagging. And I do believe that AI is going to influence our lives significantly in the health sector and improve them. And I think the era in which we live in right now, where AI is taking over pretty much any industry, is super exciting for someone who likes technology like myself. Actually, it makes me um, excited to work in technology again after so many years of being in the same internet space. This is just a huge leap. So for me, being able to bring this to an industry that is not really um, an early adopters of technology is a big challenge, and this is why I took it. And as for ops in this region, so we talked 10 minutes ago about the skills that an ops person needs to have. And I think it's not different in that in this industry. I would say, though, that this industry of health is way more regulated than the web industry. And this requires any company that works in this space to be, I would say, more cautious. This sometimes forces companies to be a little bit slower in development to make sure that no harm is done. And I think that's a major difference from, just running in the web, trying to get some things done. And you test and it doesn't work, and you test again, and it's like, it doesn't work like that in health. You can't really do that. But there are many similarities. Like if you just take a look at, I don't know, like and customer experience, right? Customer experience, if you want to enhance it, make it more personal, make it have customers come back to you, like customer retention. It's still the same, the same KPIs, the same processes, the same goal in mind. It's just a different environment. And I think the tools are very, very similar as well. So there are a lot of similarities, but also some nuances that are very specific to the industry.
Got it. Interesting. And in terms of that, you mentioned kind of the process, like it takes a lot more, it's a slower pace, I guess. Um, and obviously I think like that's precautionary because you don't want to move too fast in a space that is affecting people's lives essentially, right? Like it could
Correct.
ultimately affect lives. So, do you feel like that? I mean, it seems like there's a bit of a trade-off, meaning like you're not going as fast, but the stakes are higher to a certain degree. Like how do you adjust for that maybe on a personal level from like, even from like a psychological level, like how you're trying to approach things in this setting versus like how you have done it before. Like I could very easily you know, see somebody like spending two times the amount of effort and diligence on something in this instance versus before and still going like half the speed.
Correct. You're absolutely correct. And this is exactly the balance all companies in this space are trying to get to. And the way, like, if you look at the internet industry, there is not much at stake if you're doing something that is not 100% right.
Yep.
So you just do it because the cost of not doing is higher than the cost of of making a mistake. So you just keep doing until you get it right. And if you have a bug and the system is down, the system is down. And you have some resilience and redundancy, and you bring it back up, and you limit the audience, and all these methods that we have, and it's a well-known field. In the medical space, it's completely different. And the way to do that is going, by stages. So you do it only in a retrospective manner, meaning you take data, you say, what if we've used this kind of algorithm to predict the results? What would we have done? This is completely risk-free, right? And then you say, okay, so now we need some, I would say, live data or live partners that are willing to test it with us. And then we go side by side. But that takes months, right? And only in the last stage, we go to the regulator, say, okay, this is what we've done. Now let's do a real side-by-side test. Okay, and prove that this system is really at least as good as human, if not better.
Mm.
And then we go through that in every country,
Mm.
right? And then only after that, we go into the clinics themselves and work with the physicians. And physicians many times say, yeah, I know the regulator approved it, but I'm not sure I'm 100% aligned with that. Let's prove it on my patient, or my patients, or my audience, or my data, or my system, or whatever is it that is different. So we have to go through that. So that takes months. It's not minutes, it's months, until you're able to go to market in a specific place and go through the commercialization process. So I think it's just a different approach. But once you do that, once you go through this bar and you pass it, there is very low resistance. So yes, the stakes are higher, but also the chances of making it is, as you progress, you can estimate what are the chances you're going to pass the next stage.
Yeah, makes
But
sense.
it's a long journey,
Yeah,
definitely.
absolutely. I know we're running up on time, but there's just one more question I have for you is, at this stage of your career, um, I imagine, you're kind of, you've hit the C-suite in terms of like the pinnacle of what you are trying to do from probably like from a goal perspective. But what is driving you now? Obviously, you have a very big mission here at AIVF. I mean, I'm sure you're tied to it beyond just what your role is within the organization, and there's probably some personal ties to that mission, as you had kind of alluded to in the very beginning of the conversation. Um, is that what's driving you? Is it kind of just leveraging AI, specifically technology in the healthcare field, to make advancements? Is that something that's driving you, your motivating force for the next few years here, especially as a lot of technological changes are happening?
Yeah, so that's a good question. I think AI is already everywhere.
Yep.
So for me, yeah, doing good in healthcare is a great place to be in, but it's not the only place. We can make our lives better with technology, and specifically with AI, on many other aspects of our lives. And as I said before, I think AI, for me personally, brings back the excitement of being in technology space, and which I didn't have for several years now. So I would definitely stick with implementing AI solutions, not necessarily in the health space, um, but all across. And moreover, I believe organizations today, um, technological operations, and technology companies, I think creating this these companies that have great leadership, have great products, uh, that are not doing evil, they're actually making lives better. Um, this is where I'd like to be in the next, 10 years. And I believe that there are many companies like that all across the world that can actually drive that goal.
Got it. Very cool. On that note, I want to say thank you so much for taking the time and sharing your insights and giving us behind the scenes look at what a chief operations officer day to day tends to look like, but across different industries. I think it was very insightful, at least for me, very interesting to kind of get a understanding of like what that role plays in an organization. So thank you.
Thank you very much, Chris, for having me. I had a great time. Thank you.